Some people jump to the technology. Some people want to learn the shortcut versus earn the shortcut. And it loses something. And I think when you can connect to people and you can tell the difference between somebody's telling something they lived versus somebody who's just reading something or telling a story. And I think people still, despite everything that's changed and all, people still connect.
Yeah, you know? It's so true, Marcus. Case in point, part of my story is that I was depressed for a couple of years, and my mother found out. She was a very strong woman. She had a stroke at age 39 and a half, 95% recovery. When she found out, she and my father went into the room and cried a little bit. Then she came in my bedroom and said, listen, you're a good looking boy. You're funny. You have friends. And guess what? You also have epilepsy, and you're going to deal with it. It's going to keep you grounded. But I did take her advice, but not the first 2 years, and was depressed. But when you talk about technology, part of my story is to embrace your struggle, to learn more about it, more about struggles other people have in that realm. And I did 2 months of research in the library when there was no internet. So I had to go in the back of the room and I had to look on microfiche. And whenever I say that to my students, they think I'm saying a small fish, a microfiche. Yeah. But the microfiche is just rolling and getting all this information. And yes, although you could get that information that took me 2 months in 45 minutes today on the internet, it was quite a journey. And empowered me to do that research and learn in however long it took me. So would have been easier to have a Google back then and technology? Yes, but as you said, I had to earn that shortcut. See, I couldn't create it.
I think that we go from novice to expert too quick because we think that knowledge is wisdom, and it isn't. It's part of the journey to wisdom. And I think there's this informational gluttony that we didn't have back then because we only had so many hours in a day before the librarian threw us out, and we could only take in the information so much. You go on Google, I go on Google with the best of intentions to research something, and I always end up watching a monkey riding a motorcycle, Sure. And I don't remember how I got there.
And I'm with you, and YouTube is worse for me. I'll be looking up one thing, and 4 hours later, I'm like, what the hell was I looking up to begin with? I can't
what did
remember.
I start with?
Right. So you have to really be able to temper that and do some time management, because for sure, there's so much out there.
How many students in your career do you think you've taught?
I've probably physically taught, I want to say, close to 3,000. Also tutored about 500 or 600 on my own. My company has tutored several thousand. And then if you count the students in audiences, and I call them students even though they're counselors, a lot of them are teenagers and college students. So it's definitely in the thousands. To me, it's not enough. I'd rather speak in front of 600 people than 10, although I love the intimate talks and I have great talks with individuals. I do a lot of educational consulting with parents and kids. And sometimes the kids say, boy, you have such a great handle on this. And yet, could I say yes, because I'm the educational guru? Some people call me the educator's educator. But to your point, my answer usually is, yes, I do know a lot of things. I'm old. That's what I tell the kids. I mean, I've lived it. I've learned it. I've been in schools, and I say, luckily, that didn't have tons of money. I was in the Bronx for 10 years. I was in a school district in Rockland County, New York, where 78% of the students were free and reduced lunch. And I knew the lesson I delivered was the review. They weren't going home to the review. They were going and leaving school to work till 11 o'clock at night. Some of them illegally working 60 hours a week when you really aren't allowed to do that at that age to help their families. So, it was quite an on-the-job training, especially starting in the Bronx, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. I mean, I got an education as much as I gave an education.
Well, people don't realize that teachers are the adults that spend, in many cases, the majority of the waking hours with children.
Well, absolutely. 6.5 hours a day is spent with us. And then you have sleeping time. And if they're out playing basketball, if they're out working or babysitting. So it's tremendous. And, that's why I call it the triangle of education. You need the school, which means the teachers, even the custodians, the lunchroom people, the administrators. Then you have the parent, then you have the child. If you don't have the full 3 points, the triangle, you could lose it. And it's hard because I see in some schools you don't have the parent buy-in and the community support that you need. So I help schools actually work with that a lot when I work with schools on that kind of training level. But education's not easy, but I honestly believe, of course, I have my own opinion because I am an educator. Education is the key to everything. I think it's the key to many of our nation's ills and violence and things of this nature that's going on all the time. I think that, excellent schooling, and it's not just, I'm not one of the few, but not enough people let you know that it's not just about the 42 minutes or 55 minutes of math. It's about the lessons in between. It's about the connection with the students and the families. It's about attending the basketball games and going to the school plays. I was very lucky. My father always said, make sure you have a job that you can whistle when you go there and you can sing. And I've been known to sing in the hallways, and, I really loved what I did.
What do you feel about, what are your feelings on homeschooling?
Interesting. So I have had several homeschool students, now even more because now that I'm semi-retired and I don't teach anymore, I still tutor even more, but I do a lot. And some of my retired teachers do that during the day, but during the day it would be homeschooling. And I have to tell you, at least the ones I've worked with, they're so regimented and so organized that, if they're homeschooled for the right reasons, not because they were violent in school and got kicked out and have to be homeschooled. But I homeschool so many on my live platform. They just do the work and they know what time to do what assignment, and they're organized. So I don't think anything takes the full place of the camaraderie and the connection of students to teachers and students to other students. So I think you need that social connection. But most, if not all, of the ones I've homeschooled have been socially well adjusted. They had extracurricular activities. I had one kid who was like an excellent fencer, and one was a great swimmer. So I've been impressed with what I've seen, but I think that I believe in things in moderation. I want to see, and I've done some SAT courses online for football teams, and something I developed called Quick Hits, where between school ending and football practice, they would get ACT and SAT prep with either me or some of my instructors. And I think that I would love to see snow days where students have assignments and they log in and there's a live teacher, or their teacher's on Skype or some kind of platform that's out there, and they can teach. So there's no wasted time. So you don't have to make up school days all the time. But I don't want someone necessarily going to school 181 days and that's all they learn. I like online a little bit. I like in person. I think a mixture is good. So, I'm sure people miss certain things that homeschooling can offer, and vice versa is certainly the case.
I said the same thing. I know a couple people who homeschool their kids, and I have a major prejudice against it because I make assumptions when I hear that, and so I liked it. I discussed it with them and everything, and everybody seems to be doing a good job, but I think that you can't substitute that component of interacting with people, because I think you get too isolated. And if you homeschool all your way up and then go into college and you stay in college and become a career college student to a doctorate, you can get out with very little actual exposure to the world you've got to live in. And I think that, splitting the difference and having, maybe you're homeschooled half the year or 3/4 of the year or something, but it just seems like that you do put, the education is important, but so much of the education that I received in school had nothing to do with math and English. And had to dealing with a big important part was dealing with adults that weren't your family, and learning to interact with different people and learning about personalities and just dealing with people. And, we're talking about information, how people get information. I think that one of the downsides to the amount of information we can get is that we have the ability to focus and pinpoint our information. It's so narrow that we can, you can go on and I can just get news feeds about the A-Team and any episodes of the A-Team that are airing, and that becomes my world,
right.
And not that I do that, but but you can just get it so laser-like focused that you think that is the world. And I think that we need to be, we need to be exposed to other things. We need to, kind of walk through that mental supermarket and get to the milk and eggs. You have to pass other things.
Sure.
And that's why that stuff's not near the door, because you wouldn't experience that.
Right. It's not just arriving at the destination. It's the journey that took you there.
It's the journey. And I think that some of this takes something out of the journey. And I think part of the journey is a little bit of adversity, a little bit of struggle. And then from that produces what we used to call grit, and you build some character from that.
Absolutely. There's a chapter in my book called True Grit. It's a story of my mother overcoming her stroke. So I'm well familiar with that word.
Did you take that from the John Wayne movie?
I did.
Okay. I didn't know if he took it from you.
Yeah. But at least you mentioned the original. That shows you how old we are, because we know the original, because not the remake.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Which was also good.
Yeah.
Jeff Bridges, but the John Wayne one.
I give remakes zero chance. I give them zero chance. What do you think as an educator, or what would you hope that your legacy is?
Interesting. So after a while of teaching, I started to go on committees and to interview principals, prospective principals and other teachers. And I asked them this question. It's sort of like yours. And I said, so pretend the year is over. We hired you. You're here for a year. And we hide a tape recording device at the lunch table, underneath the lunch table. And the kids are talking about you. What are they saying? So I'll answer you that way. I want kids to say, I am kind of known for my sense of humor in the classroom, that they had a good sense of humor, but I want them to say that they learned a lot from me. But in the realm of what you had said, that they learned a lot from me academically, but a lot more. I really believe in character education. I've had 3 fights in my room in 33 years, which is absolutely unheard of, especially since 10 of my years were in the Bronx. So to have 3 fights in over 3 decades is really unheard of, because I had zero tolerance for disrespect, zero tolerance for bullying. So I want people to also to say that my classroom was a classroom where they felt academically, emotionally, and physically safe, and that they learned to become better people from my teaching.
What do you think the number one problem facing teachers now is?
I think now it's teaching to the test. I think that we're not trusted enough. Many of us are excellent. Look, are there bad plumbers? Yeah. Are there great plumbers? Yes. Are there bad teachers? Sure. But by and large, I think that it takes a special human being to be a teacher. Obviously, half of me is saying that because I was a teacher for so long. But, it's not about July and August. It's about the 10 months of being with these kids, with their problems, with their issues, with their mood swings, and bringing them to the next level. But I think that we're tethered a little bit too much. I think, to strut our stuff and go a little bit from the curriculum. I was allowed to, luckily, stray a little bit and do what I needed to do. But I just think that I think we've lost the hold of the fundamentals, because all my friends who were taught in the 70s, most of them did just fine and are very successful. And they didn't have all these exams that we have now. They didn't have all these teach to the tests, standardized tests and things of that nature. So I think that's one of the problems. And unfortunately, the other problem is things have switched. We don't have the full support of the parents anymore. And some would say we don't deserve it. I would argue that, till my dying day, I think we do deserve it. But I'm reminded of a couple of years ago, I saw a cartoon in a magazine, and it had 2 pictures, and it said 1970. And it was 2 parents on open school night holding a very bad report card and looking to their child and saying, what's the meaning of this? And then it said 2015. And it was the same parents with the same child, with the same report card, but the parents turned to the teacher and said, what's the meaning of this? So that's very telling about placing blame, and that's why you need that triangle. You need the parents, the community, the teachers, and the students. You need the buy-in of everybody. So I'd like to see, I think communication is broken down, and I think that, to your point earlier, I think it might be partially because of technology.
I had an educator on here, and he talked about people's parents contacting their professors in college because they were dissatisfied with his grade or whatever, and not even realizing that that's just inappropriate. But the, you're worried about time. See, we're just about done.
Right,
do a little after show. But what's your website?
So 2 websites. One is www.gradesuccess.com, gradesuccess.com. The author's site is www.marchoberman.com. Sorry, Mark, but that's with a C, M-A-R-C.